Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about repo rate. What is repo rate? Why we need repo rate, or what are the elements in the economy that are being affected by repo rate, and how repo rate affects the consumers of the commercial bank. Okay, so let's start with what is repo rate or the definition of repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which the central bank, that is the RBI in India, lends money to the commercial banks. In simple words, whenever commercial banks need funds to meet the short-term liquidity needs, they go and ask help from the RBI, and the RBI lends them the funds at this rate of interest. Okay. Now, how RBI lends them the funds? Against the government securities. We are going to discuss this later. Coming to the next part, that is how the repo rate influence the economy. First, it affects the liquidity in the banking system, and it affects or helps us in regulating the inflation in the economy. When inflation is high in the economy, RBI increases the repo rate because, as we discussed earlier, repo rate is the rate at which the RBI lends money to the commercial bank. Hence, it affects the liquidity of the banking system. Whenever there is high inflation in the economy, that means liquidity is already high in the banking system. Liquidity is already high in the market. That's why the repo rate is increased by the government or the RBI. This increased repo rate increases the borrowing cost of the commercial bank. When the commercial bank's borrowing costs are high, they will borrow less from the central bank. Hence, the liquidity in the market would fall and inflation would be regulated. And whenever the government wants economic growth or development in the country, it reduces the repo rate, because reducing the repo rate will reduce the borrowing cost of the commercial bank. So the commercial bank will borrow more from the RBI. Liquidity in the banking system will increase. This will encourage the consumers to borrow more. When the consumers will borrow more, the economic activities in the country will increase and there will be more economic growth. Currently, the repo rate of India is 5.25% in the first quarter of 2026. This is the repo rate. Now coming to the second part, how it affects the consumers of the commercial bank. When repo rate falls, interest rates for the consumers will fall. This interest rate is the borrowing interest rate for the consumers. Okay? Because till now we are discussing the borrowing interest rate. The borrowing interest rate of the commercial bank, the borrowing interest rate of the consumers. Similarly, when the repo rate increases, the borrowing interest rate for the consumer will also increase. So the repo rate and the borrowing interest rate of the consumers are completely directly related. Now coming to how the commercial banks get the funds from the central bank at repo rate or at this rate. So the commercial banks sell securities to the central bank with an agreement to buy them back at a slightly higher price. Now this slightly higher price is nothing but the interest rate or the repo rate. Now the last part of this video, how the repo rate affects the deposits in the economy. High repo rate will lead to higher returns on deposits. Here we are talking about fixed deposits. When there is high repo rate, the central bank and the government wants less liquidity in the market, may it be for any reason, may it be to regulate the inflation or any other reason. Okay, so when there is high repo rate, the government and the RBI wants less liquidity in the market, and hence they will encourage more deposits. The banking system will encourage more deposits in the economy. So they will give high returns on deposits to encourage the consumers to deposit more at that point of time. Similarly, on the other hand, low repo rate will give us low returns on deposits. Okay, so this is all about the repo rate. I hope this video is helpful for you. Please do subscribe to my channel for more such concepts if you want to learn more such concepts. Okay, thank you.